Hello there and a very warm welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I'm Victor Mathias. Now, the keenly contested 2023 general elections are now in the past, with election petition tribunals sitting all round to address the grievances of the contestants. However, while this is ongoing, all is set for the May 29th swearing in and handover. And as presidents and governors are mandated by law to announce their cabinet members within the first 6 months, what will be at stake for young people when that begins to happen. According to figures provided by INEC, about 37 million or 39.65% of total voters are between the ages of 18 and 34, while 33,400,000 or 35.75% are middle-aged persons between ages of 35 and 49. We also understand that about 18.94% of the total registered voters are elderly voters between the ages of 50 and 69, just as the remaining 5.66% are senior citizens above the age of 70. Now, so in all of this now, where do young people stand when the time begins, or when the time comes, for all of these ministers, commissioners, heads of parastatals of governments, where would the place of young people be? Well, that would be our focus today on the show. But before we get into all of that, let's first of all take a look at the trending topics in the past week.
The Movie Awards was the talk of the town as actors were rewarded for the work they put in the previous year. The event had the creme de la creme of African screen gracers who were gaily dressed for the occasion. Some controversy trailed the event, though, as some felt certain winners were not deserving over those who were nominated in their categories. Nigeria's blockchain policy was finally launched, and that drew mixed reactions amongst players in the tech ecosystem. While some have welcomed the policy, others are of the opinion that was not all-encompassing, as not many stakeholders were consulted before the policy was drafted. The committee to implement the policy has since been inaugurated by the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy.
Were the trends in the past week, and also now joining us to look at the trending topics for the topic of the day. We have with us right here in the Abuja studio, Hamzat Lawal. He is the CEO of Connected Development. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, Hamzat.
Well, thank you for having me, Victor.
Absolutely. We also have joining us via Zoom from Ottawa in Canada, Abraham Great. He is a public affairs analyst. Abraham, it's a pleasure to have you join us on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, let me quickly also get to hear from Abraham, his own thoughts, as regards how young people should be brought into the system, governance, if you like. Now, Abraham, let me just, get to hear from you. Hamzat is saying that in as much as young people actually played a key role in determining those who would be governing us for the next 4 years, things that should be key is competence, character, capacity, capability, quite a number of C's therein. But in your own estimation, how do you think things should be?
First of all, there has to be a proper establishment of what the facts are or what the figures are. We have ambiguity in our population census to actually know the number of youth that are in the country. I think it was the United Nations population statistics that gave us the fact that we have 70% of Nigerian population is just between the age of 18 and 40. We don't really have, precise statistics to be sure that that is indeed the fact. So we need to first of all establish the fact. The next thing we need to do is to the leadership, the coming administration have to improve upon communication. So not only the inclusion, part of the inclusion is engagement. So you will see that there is parity between government and the people. And that's why we see a lot of agitation in the country. I'll give you a typical example. In the current administration, you cannot, in a country that you have that kind of statistics, about 70% being said to be youth, and you have someone almost at the age of 70 or over the age of 70 or in their 60 as communication minister. I think already you have already set up yourself. It's a recipe for miscommunication, discommunication, misappropriation of information, because you have generational gap. So one of the things that we will have to do is to get communication right between the administration and the citizenry. If more than 60% or said 70% of your
We also hear from Abraham. Abraham, are there any of those who perhaps you would say caught your eye in the as they carried out their duties, during this period, 4 to 8 years, as it were?
Yes, I would say so. There are so many, just like my colleague in the studio have said, there are many people that they might not have position in the government in terms of, but they are the brain behind the government as it's running. Most of the bills that have been passed into law, 16 acts that have been passed into law, I mean, it's hugely driven by entrepreneurs, young people who are, their names may not be in government sheets, but they are one way or the other involved in running this current administration. So I'll give you a typical example of someone who have been there from his teenage, Dayo Israel, who is now the National Youth Chairman for APC. So that is a typical example who has been there from a young age. And you can see that from the antecedent of Senator Bola Tinubu, that you can see that most of the people that are in their 50s, their 60s today, he met them when they were in their early 20s. People like Fashola, people like the current governor of Lagos State, people like, Dele Alake. So many of these people, he met them in their 20s. Or in their early 30s. But we have to realize that the government, the way they came about by a lot of amalgamation. So there will be some compensation that has to be done, and that is going to be troublesome because we're looking for competence, but at the same time, there will be a need for sense of rewarding some people. So creating a balance between that. And also, just like my colleague in the studio said, there is a group of people that are within a certain age. And this particular age is the age of 40 to 50. These people have been serving people in government, and by the United Nations qualification, they are no longer qualified as youth. So that's where someone like myself or my colleague in the studio falls. But they've been serving since their teenage or their early 30s. How exactly do we define who is youth? But there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of youth that are involved in government at local level, state level, and in many other levels in Nigeria already.
Well, I kind of quite agree. Hamzat is actually smiling here in the studio. I'm trying to get his thoughts as to why. But before I do all of that, speaking about those who, operates in the background, at times, you never get credit. So you never might get all of your work on your resume, so to speak. And, moving forward, what you need, to land those top jobs, influential positions in government is your resume. So how do we bridge that gap?
So bridging the gap is, first of all, to set our expectations right. It's not everybody that will be in governance. It's not everybody that will be ostentatious. It's not everybody that will be known. If the motive is right, if we really want to advance our country, we should also be happy by having positions that are not ostentatious, which means that we are supporting the arms. Some of the names that we now know in government, we do not know them 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but they've been there. So youth also have to learn that we have to get involved in national politics, national governance, and the national economy by becoming entrepreneur ourselves. So an average Nigerian thinks that we will only make it in government. But actually, every one of us can become social entrepreneurs. We can lead our country from where we are, and then the more success we have, we will catch the attention of the federal government. You catch the attention because if you are doing well, if you are outstanding, if you are good at what you do, one way your name will be mentioned somewhere and you become more and more relevant. So we should move away from positional service to becoming competent individuals, people of integrity. Then our character, our competence would then fetch us out.
Abraham, what would you want to see? Hamzat is pretty much, giving us like a rundown of what he would want to see. what he expects the president-elect to do first and foremost, when he takes over office. But what would you want to see? What would you want to be seeing, when he eventually comes into power?
I could sum it in about 3 or 4 things. One is intentionality. On his manifesto, The Renewed Hope, the president-elect elaborated on the fact that they really want to engage youth. So we would want to see him actually be intentional about that even the National Assembly is already constituted and most of the polity of the National Assembly is already settled behind the door. But we want to see the engagement of young people in the leadership of people that serve with members of the National Assembly in a way of discipling those young people into governance. Because those who are ruling Nigeria at the moment, if you look at their age, average is 60, 65, 70 to 80. In the next 16 years, these people will not be there, and they have to train a generation that will be coming after them. So younger people, a lot more young people need to be brought into the corridor of power and show a simulation of how the country runs. Another thing that I would like them to see is to actually emphasize on education. And by education, our education system is very, very trappy for our young people. Passing WAEC, passing JAMB is a breeding ground for corruption in the country, because the way those things have been structured, the exam problems and what have you, people are not properly educated. There needs to be introduction of national vocational qualifications in such a way there are people who have struggled for years and could not make it to university, but they are more qualified. They are more trained. They have worked in places, worked with people. So there needs to be a way to be able to capture those people who are nationally, if their education or experience is equivalent to a degree. How do we integrate those people to begin to now sum them into degree holders and then let them participate in governance, in leadership of the country? And the final thing I'm going to reiterate is communication. Communication is key. You realize that everywhere in the world, I use America because that's the kind of democracy that we practice in Nigeria. Even as old as the president of America is forced to tweet on a daily basis, is forced to do press conference almost on a daily basis. There is too much gap between leadership in Nigeria. Our leaders are almost like lords and savior, that everybody is hoping that the savior will come and speak to us in a public address that is done on a green screen and edited. No, we want our president to come out live on a regular basis. We want to see our, now the president-elect, we are giving him daddy, we're calling him Idon. It might make some mistakes, but get engaged with the young people.
Yeah.
If there was one president that did that very well, at least reasonably well, that was President Olusegun Obasanjo. It was there everywhere, communicating with everybody.
Well,